I have recently rewatched the Harry Potter film series from start to finish, and it has rekindled my love of the wizarding world by a significant amount. And it also has made me realise that despite being a fan of Harry Potter, I have only ever done one other Harry Potter video. And so, as a result, I've decided to put together another one, because it's a franchise I love and it's something I'd love to explore more on this channel. This list is going to go over the 10 best characters in the Harry Potter series. Before we get into it, these characters are not ranked by their power level. They are ranked by their personalities, their actions, and the impact they had in the series, and the connection I had with them throughout the films. This is also a subjective list and is based on my own opinion of said characters. So, here we go. Number 10, Remus Lupin. Remus Lupin was probably the best Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher that Hogwarts had. He managed to be an effective teacher, and he also taught Harry how to use the Patronus charm, which proved to be quite effective for the boy who lived later down the line. This is, for me, what made Lupin a great character. He was actually an effective teacher, and you could tell he enjoyed what he did. Even though he was a werewolf, he still managed to be a skilled wizard and a gifted intellectual. That being said, however, possibly due to his condition, Remus was incredibly paranoid and he was prone to quick assumptions. For example, when Sirius Black was framed for killing Peter Pettigrew, Lupin immediately assumed that Sirius was the one to blame, despite the fact that he and Sirius had been best friends during their time at Hogwarts. He also assumed that the real Harry Potter was an imposter the minute he landed at the Weasley house after the Battle of the Seven Potters. While I definitely did enjoy Remus as a character, I felt that sometimes his paranoia and easily assumptive nature was annoying, and while his reasons were certainly fair and his lycanthropy was interesting, the attachment I felt to him as a character just wasn't the same as the others. That's not to say Remus sucks though. Lupin was an incredibly skilled wizard, and I hope he's resting peacefully. Number 9, Alastor Moody. Although he was actually a completely different person for the majority of the time we saw him on screen, that's not to say that Alastor Mad-Eye Moody wasn't a brilliant character. Alastor was fierce, and at times he was ferocious, and his days as an Auror and his experience catching dark wizards make him a valuable asset to both the Order of the Phoenix and as an ally protecting Harry from Voldemort. I loved watching Moody on screen, and I enjoyed his ferocious and experienced demeanour, which for me accentuated his presence and his power. I thought it was also amazingly impressive that even though Moody had basically been forgotten about for a year when he was being impersonated, he came back and continued his work like nothing had ever happened. That kind of trauma suppression just, at least for me, accentuates Moody's experience and his talent in the magical arts. This made it all the more impactful when Alastor was killed off screen during Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Although I probably would not have liked to have seen Moody die on screen, as that would have been horrible to view, considering how important he was and how dedicated he was to stopping Voldemort and protecting Harry. Number 8, Minerva McGonagall. How could you not love Minerva McGonagall? Not only was she an expert in transfiguration and an animagus, but she was also Albus Dumbledore's heir as the head of Hogwarts. Definitely a position she has earned throughout her time. McGonagall was a brilliant teacher, and she was especially influential in her position as the head of Gryffindor House. McGonagall was also a wise and experienced witch, being capable of great knowledge as shown when she educated the students on the Chamber of Secrets. I also love the fact that McGonagall was very concerned of and protective of Harry, though despite her age, she was more than willing to fight for what she believed in. For example, though she was concerned about Harry for his participation in the Triwizard Tournament, she was still supportive of Harry and saw him through to the end. McGonagall also helped defend the castle in the Battle of Hogwarts, allowing her students to create explosive devices. What I loved about McGonagall was just how supportive she was, and how much she was willing to defend Harry. It's for this reason I put her at the spot I did. And may Maggie Smith rest in peace. Number 7, Hermione Granger. We all know how brilliant Hermione was in terms of her power and skill level of a witch, and for me that's exactly what made her an impactful character for me. During her time at Hogwarts, Hermione was probably the most intelligent student, mastering the majority of her classes and becoming an incredibly skilled duelist and magical wielder. Hermione's intelligence is also what propelled her through the Second Wizarding War, as her knowledge of all things magical was valuable in her quest, along with Harry and Ron, to hunt down and destroy the Horcruxes. What I loved about Hermione was how brilliant she was. While at times she could be a little arrogant and self-aware of her brilliance, not unlike Dumbledore, she was still a good friend to have by your side and a pleasure to watch on screen. She didn't tend to let her feelings for others blind her, and she remained focused and headstrong no matter the consequences. She was also good-natured and helpful, for example when she tried to repair Harry's wand when one of her spells rebounded. I love Hermione and would love to see her come back if they make a film of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, though something makes me doubt that Emma Watson will actually return. Number 6. Harry Potter. Yes, Harry Potter is the main character and a lot of plot armour consumes him, but I really enjoy Harry whenever he is on screen. What I love about Harry is that he doesn't necessarily feel like a main character. He feels fully developed and he feels three-dimensional. He goes through the stages of life that we all do as we grow up, though on a lot more of an extreme side of things. In each film, Harry is at a different stage in his life, and as he grows up, everything becomes a lot more serious as Harry becomes more mature, which, to be honest, is what happens when you grow up. When you're a child, you have a lot of innocence within you. You don't necessarily understand how the world actually functions, and you're concealed from the darkness of life. However, as you grow to be more mature, you come to understand the world on a much deeper level, and suddenly certain things become bleak. This is what happens as the Harry Potter films go on, and what I see as Harry grows up. Harry feels like a representation of the stages of life that we all go through as we mature. He feels somewhat relatable, and he's what we all feel when we experience happiness, joy, and even sadness. I also love the fact that Harry had a lot of sass in him. Some of his moments were not just dramatic and powerful moments. He had minor moments of humour and sarcasm, which added to his somewhat sassy nature. I love Harry as a character, and he's one of the most important protagonists in fiction for a reason. Number 5. Severus Snape. I've always had an attraction towards flawed and dark characters, which is probably why I love Snape so much. While he was initially presented as that one teacher that we all fear because they were mean, Snape grew to become much more than that. Not only was he a powerful wizard, being responsible for creating his own spells, but he was incredibly misunderstood and very well layered. While he was bitter and resentful towards Harry in his younger years, he still put his all into protecting Potter and tried not to let harm befall him, despite his anger towards Potter's father. I also love Snape's position as a double agent within the ranks of the Death Eaters. Even though Bellatrix was suspicious of Snape's loyalties, Snape was still able to sneak around the ranks of the Death Eaters, and I think he even tricked Voldemort into thinking he was loyal. Snape's relationship with Dumbledore was also intriguing, and his backstory of being in love with Lily and the relentless bullying he suffered from James Potter and his friends allowed for me to see the depth and layers within Snape. This made his death all the more heartbreaking, as at the end of the day, even though he was shrouded in darkness, Snape was dedicated to the light and sought to protect, even though he had been hurt. Number 4. Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore is not your typical wise old mentor that you normally see in a fantasy story. Magically, his skill is unrivaled, as at least in the wizarding world, Dumbledore was considered the most powerful wizard ever. But that's not what made him a brilliant and well-developed character, at least for me. What made Dumbledore so impactful for me was that he was not perfect. Like I've said previously, I've always loved characters who are flawed and imperfect, as I believe it's much more impactful, significant, and allows for a deeper emotional connection to said character, and an understanding of human nature in general. Dumbledore is exactly that. He's flawed, and at times his morals are incredibly questionable. He raised Harry like, in Snape's words, a pig for slaughter, and sought to have him die at the right moment in order to properly defeat Voldemort. But what I loved about Dumbledore was that despite his flaws, his history, and his murky morals, he rose above the bad things in life and became a better, if questionable, person because of it. He was wise and he was ready to help, and his deep belief in the power of love and light was second to none, and quite beautiful to see. His relationship with Harry and his desire to see the good in those he loved despite the bad was heartwarming and touched Dumbledore close to my heart. His death, in addition, was tear-jerking, and the funeral at the end of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince was also similarly heartbreaking, linking to Dumbledore's strong emotion and his wise and powerful words. Number 3. Molly Weasley. What I loved about Molly Weasley was how motherly and protective she was of her children and those close to her. She fit the definition of a mother bear, and she was also incredibly hospitable and welcoming. Even though she did have a bit of a temper, she provided some amazing comic relief in the oftentimes dark tone of the Harry Potter story. In addition, she was not to be underestimated in terms of her skill as a witch. After all, how many people can say they killed Bellatrix Lestrange, one of the most dangerous Death Eaters to ever live? Molly's attitude as a mother and her caring and welcoming nature was nice to see, and I love the fact that despite the fact that she had little to no money and 4 children, she was still dedicated and strove to protect and love them all. Her position as a member of the Order of the Phoenix was also interesting, and it also propelled her status of being a skilled witch, as well as emphasising her protective nature towards those she cared about. Number 2. Rubeus Hagrid. Hagrid was one of the greatest characters in the Harry Potter film series, as well as in the books. I loved Hagrid's humble and oftentimes bumbling nature. His passion for magical creatures and his love for Harry was compelling. He acted at times like a big brother towards Harry, Hermione, and Ron. It was also admirable to see his loyalty to Dumbledore and his willingness to sacrifice some of his own happiness to further the education of both Harry and the status of Dumbledore. This is what I loved mainly about Hagrid, his loyalty and his love. He was protective and he was humble, being approachable even at the worst of times. Hagrid was also durable. He survived the Battle of Hogwarts and, by the looks of things, sustained but persisted through a lot of brutal torture at the hands of the Death Eaters. I also love Hagrid's passion for magical creatures, and his care for creatures such as Buckbeak and Fang was second to none, and reminds me of all the people I know who love animals. Hagrid's personality also very rarely changed. He was just humble and friendly, and remained that way even in the darkest and most challenging of times. Number 1. Sirius Black. Now, there could have been multiple candidates for this spot. However, for me, Sirius Black is undoubtedly the best character in the Harry Potter films. Sirius was not only a skilled and powerful wizard, but his backstory and loyalty was unrivaled by majority of the other characters in the franchise. Sirius was also a kick-ass friend. When he and his friends James and Pettigrew discovered Remus was a werewolf, they underwent the incredibly complex and irritating process of becoming animagi, all to support Remus while he was in his werewolf form. Sirius also had a fun and rebellious personality, carrying with him the type of attitude where he makes his own rules and abides by his own practices. I also think there was a permanently tragic element about Sirius. His framing of being the one who betrayed Lily and James Potter to Voldemort, as well as his tarnished reputation as a madman and follower of Voldemort, left him with a lot of emotional and mental damage. However, what I loved about Sirius was not only his loyalty and dedication as a friend, but how suitable he was as a guardian for Harry. Being Harry Potter's godfather, I always thought it was so sad that we never got to see Harry be sent back to live with Sirius after he was set free and his name was cleared. I loved watching Sirius on screen. He could be funny, intelligent, and like Harry, had a bit of a sassy side to him. I also loved that Sirius was emotional and headstrong. He had a strong sense of love within him and was willing to not only die for those he loved, but exact revenge on those who had betrayed the ones he cared about. He was willing to murder Peter Pettigrew and also spent the first few months in his freedom from Azkaban tracking down Pettigrew. While Sirius certainly had a hot temper and could occasionally be blinded by his own emotions, Sirius was ultimately driven by a pure desire to help and to create a better environment for those he loved. And for this reason, I consider Sirius Black to be the greatest character in the Harry Potter film series. There you have it, guys, the 10 greatest characters in the Harry Potter franchise. I really hope you enjoyed it, and like I said, this list is simply subjective and it's my own opinion. Harry Potter is a franchise that is globally appreciated, and I'm sure every fan has their own opinion of who the best character is. Let me know what you think of these choices, and also allow yourself to express who you think are the greatest characters in the Harry Potter franchise. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye!